Hello, everyone, and peace be with you. I hope you're doing well. We're back with another discussion. I said that we would be doing two discussions. Today, I think we only have time for one. But it's okay because tomorrow I will begin the next discussion. So we spoke about the miracle of the Qur'an, why it's a miracle. We spoke about why we provided more evidence as to why the Qur'an is created. We have way more than sufficient evidence as to why the Qur'an is created. And no one, unless they're lying or unless they don't understand, can refute them. These the evidence for the Qur'an being created. So now we're going to continue with what Imam al-Hadi, peace and blessings be upon him, what he said. So Imam al-Hadi in his book about the religion, he mentions, so he says, he revealed the Qur'an to his prophet, upon him be peace. It, the Qur'an, was composed, created, conveyed, divided, compiled, and originated. It is able to be forwarded and produced by other than it. We're going to go over the part where it says it is able to be forwarded and produced by other than it. As well, so it is able to be forwarded and produced by other than it. It is protected, and Allah is its protector. It is able to be replaced by that which is the like of it. It is as the glorified said, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be oblivious, except that we bring forth better than it or similar to it. So let's get right into it. Before anything, I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I praise and I glorify him as he ought to be praised and glorified. So let's talk about that. So let's start with, it is able to be forwarded and produced by other than it, the Qur'an. That is, only that which is created could be brought about by something or someone other than that thing itself. It is said to be an effect of an effector. If something is an effect, it is brought about by someone or something. This is a characteristic of something created. This could be the root problem of the issue of the historic debate. One side assumed that the other denied the Qur'an was the eternal speech of God because of the Qur'an existing in words and letters. So one side assumed that the other denied that the Qur'an was the eternal speech of God because of the Qur'an existing in words and letters. That's us. The other side assumed that their opponents affirmed that the Qur'an existed alongside God in eternity. However, when one realizes that an effect can exist from a pre-eternal attribute, one sees that the disagreement lies only in language and terminology. Let's see. The harshest of the proponents of the Qur'an's eternality stated that their opponents were disbelievers. The harshest of those people who said that the Qur'an is eternal, they stated that their opponents were disbelievers, because stating that the Qur'an was created was seen as limiting an eternal and essential attribute of the Almighty. The logic went, if the attribute of God's speech is eternal, and the Qur'an is God's speech, subsequently, the logic went, if the attribute of God's speech is eternal and the Qur'an is God's speech, then the Qur'an therefore is eternal. Because God's speech is eternal and the Qur'an is God's speech, therefore it's eternal. They're eternal. God's speech, meaning not what's in the book, not the ink and the cover, no. They mean the Qur'an that was delivered from God, or given from God to Gabriel and delivered by Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny, and peace be upon and blessings be upon Gabriel and all of the angels. And exalted be God Most High. Since God's speech is an essential attribute, one has left the faith. That's what they say. However, when one understands that denying the eternality of the Qur'an is not denying an essential attribute, one finds his way out of the quagmire of confusion. When one understands that denying the eternality of the Qur'an is not denying the an essential attribute, one finds his way out of the quagmire of confusion. We say that it is possible to affirm the eternal speech of God without affirming the eternity of the Qur'an. Is it not true that we see the effects of God's power and knowledge? Is it not true that that creation exists because of the effect of God's will? We therefore state that the Qur'an is the created effect of God's knowledge and speech. It's the effect of God's knowledge and speech. An effect is a tangible representation of an outcome of an action or statement. The Exalted says, God, look at the effects of God's mercy. He gives life to the earth after its death. 30:30. Qur'an 30:30. I think that's Surah Rum. That's the Byzantines. That's what the name of the chapter is. God's mercy is an eternal. These are the commentators now. God's mercy is an eternal attribute. God's mercy is an eternal attribute, yet its effects are seen in creation. God's giving life to the dead earth by means of water and the like demonstrates his eternal mercy. So these things can be said to be the mercy of God. By stating this, one is not affirming that the life-giving rain is an eternal attribute of God's mercy. Rather, it is an effect of God's eternal mercy. Similar could be said regarding the Qur'an. It is God's speech in that it is a visual representation of God's will to humankind, revealed to the heart of the last prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. Again, we hear the word heart, so that people don't end up going into becoming excessive when it comes to using the brain. The brain is what we use. It's an aid. It's a blessed gift from God. But still the heart exists. The heart is still relevant. This is my disagreement with the latter Mu'tazilah. I don't believe that people like Wasil ibn Ata, the founder of what is known as I'tizal, Wasil ibn Ata, who learned from Abu Hashim, Abdullah ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, who was the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I don't believe that Wasil ibn Ata or his comrade Amr ibn Ubaid, I don't believe that these two men were busy looking at Greek philosophy and trying to do. This came later. I haven't read the whole article, but I read this part. I don't know who the author is. I don't know the name of the article. I have it. I don't have it saved. I need to save it. But I have it open in one of my web pages. So that the author mentions that the Mu'tazilah, they started with Abu al-Hudayl al-Allaf, I believe that was his name. People like him and Ibrahim al-Nadham. Those people, Abu al-Hudayl and al-Nadham and al-Jahid, these people they're Mu'tazila in that they believed in the 5 principles, but they were rational thinkers, people who were more interested in I say philosophy. People say it's not philosophy. It is philosophy. It's falsafa. It's philosophy. Because philosophy is when you come up with theories. You have a theory. You come up with a theory that has nothing to do with, there is no evidence in Qur'an. You're not using Qur'an, a verse of the Qur'an, nor are you using anything from the hadith, nor are you using basic logic. You're using something that not everyone can understand. You're a philosopher. This is the fact of the matter. And if I'm not mistaken, the Mu'tazila did take from Greek philosophy. Zaydiya, they kind of did too, but not all the Zaydiya accepted this. Because, so you're going to tell me that the family of the Prophet needed Greek philosophy? Why didn't they do that before in the first place? Well, you know, at that time they didn't need it because they weren't in Iraq where the philosophers started showing up. Then what? Philosophers just started, falafelers. The philosophers started showing up just after the Prophet died some 100 years, around Abu Hanifa's time. Don't give me that excuse about, oh, the philosophers showed up in Iraq and in Baghdad, and so we needed a tool to use. No, you did not need a tool to use. There is a way to defend, but not using some philosophy that you learned from the Greeks in order to... You can use the Greeks' way against Greek philosophers if you're debating them, but not adopt it as your own, and then it becomes suddenly part of the religion, and now all the Neo-Mu'tazila are speaking in a language nobody understands except a few. Not because we're stupid, but because we're not interested, and this is not it's an ideology. Zaydis have done the same thing. Zaydis, Ash'aris, Ibadis, all the people from Ahl al-Kalam who associate with Ilm al-Kalam, they've done this. Not all the Zaydis though. Keep in mind, it's not all the Zaydis. It's not all the Zaydis, it's not all the, I wouldn't think it's all the Ibadis, but not all of them. But many of them. Why would you do something that the prophets never did? The prophets they used logic, but not logic that goes into deep detail where you're writing books hundreds of pages long that people would read and abandon other books that deserve to be read before those books. I hate philosophy because philosophy is something that takes someone away from the beauty of nature, from the beauty of the fitrah. Philosophy has no place in Islam. If your interpretation of philosophy is saying something like, I don't know, is a kind of metaphor or poetry of some kind, I don't know, if it's like, even this it's all philosophy, but let's just say someone says, you know, I have to think of something. That the bushes are a reflection of God because God created the bushes. I mean, or the trees, or I mean, this is more like a poetry, but if you want to call it, if something related to philosophy, philosophy, you want to study philosophy, that's fine, but keep it out of the religion. Don't bring it into the religion. Keep it out of the religion. You're going to taint the religion, and you're going to get people to talking in ways that they're not supposed to be talking, that no prophet of God. You think you're better than the prophets? Excuse me for my digression, but this is something very important when it comes to these schools. Philosophy has nothing to do with Islam. Ilm al-Kalam in general, the Ilm al-Kalam meaning the science of using deep logic to defend the religion, has no place in Islam. Using logic, yes, but not this Ilm al-Kalam business. No, has nothing to do with Islam. But many of you have been fooled to think that it has something to do with Islam. No. Are you gonna when you teach your child Islam, he can learn every single thing about the Qur'an. Anything in the Qur'an he can understand. You're going to teach him Ilm al-Kalam at the age of 4, 5, and 6? Maybe he could learn it, just as someone could learn to play music and learn music theory. and learn about scales and octaves. But in Islam, we don't have such a thing. It's an innovation. It is protected. So now Imam Al-Hadi's words. It is protected and Allah is its protector. God is its protector, the Qur'an. The proof derived from this statement is that anything that is said to be protected cannot be eternal. This is because that which is dependent upon something outside of itself could not exist without that upon which it depends. Again, this is because that which is dependent upon something outside of itself could not exist without that upon which it depends. That which it depends on has to be the eternal. It cannot be eternal with something else alongside it that it depends on for protection. So this is eternal without time, and this is eternal without time, taking care of that which is eternal without time. It cannot be. Something eternal cannot rely on something else. In this in-time place and space, something is dependent on something else. My book is resting on some wood, on a wooden surface. It's depending on the surface. If there's no surface there, it could drop if I'm not holding it. The hat is depending on my head to stay on there. I am relying on gravity to be seated in this chair. Otherwise, I'd be floating around like I'm in space. So, something eternal cannot depend on another being. It cannot depend unless that being is eternal, thus making that not eternal. And you cannot say both are eternal, then you'll say both of them have a quality which is only belonging to one, and that's God. That which is dependent is limited. And that which is dependent upon something else outside of itself could not exist without that upon which it depends. So that which is eternal, which is everlasting, would never exist without that which it depends on. Qur'an depends on God to preserve it, to protect it, which is what we're arriving at. The Exalted says, "Verily, we have revealed the reminder," Qur'an, the reminder, "and we will protect it." Qur'an 15:9. Since the Qur'an is dependent upon the Lord to preserve it, it could not be protected otherwise. It depends on God to be protected. Otherwise, it could not be protected. That which is dependent is limited, and that which is limited is created. So that which is dependent is limited, and that which is limited is created. It's limited. Qur'an is limited. It's relying on God to protect it. There's no way you could say that God, even if the Qur'an is changed, or if the Qur'an, all of the Qur'ans get lost, it's preserved in the hearts. What if it's not preserved in the hearts? You cannot say that, God has it with him, so it's his eternal speech. It doesn't work that way. If you want to say it's in God's knowledge, and God's knowledge is eternal, because it's an essential attribute, God's knowledge, that's something else. It's in his knowledge. But you didn't say that. The opponents didn't say that. The opponents said the Qur'an. They said the Qur'an. They didn't say God's knowledge. They said the Qur'an being equal to God's speech. God's speech is eternal, they said. It's an essential attribute of God. It's one of the factors that make God God. But the Qur'an is not equal to his speech, which is what they say, the opponents, the staunch opponents. That which is dependent is limited, and that which is limited is created. It would be incorrect for one to say that God will protect his knowledge, his power, or his life. Does God protect his power? Does God protect his life? Does God protect his knowledge? It would be incorrect for you to say such a thing. They're not dependent upon his protection. Those are his essential attributes. How is it possible to say one thing regarding an eternal essential attribute, but not say the same thing about another? So you wouldn't say that God, his knowledge is protected. God protects his knowledge. God protects his power. God protects his life. God protects his essential attributes, his ability to create. God protects these from danger, from some threat. But you wouldn't. Why would you say that about the Qur'an? You said the Qur'an is eternal. But why? What makes it different? You said that the Qur'an is God's speech, and God's speech is his essential attribute. Since his essential attribute is eternal, the Qur'an is also eternal. Well, then why don't you say that God's power is also subject to protection? Why don't you say that God, because the Qur'an is protected, you believe that, so why don't you say God's power is protected? God's knowledge is protected. God's protected by him, is really dependent upon him to protect that power that he has from someone doing something to it. When you protect something, you're protecting it from something else, aren't you? What does protection mean? Protection from what? Being kept safe from what? You cannot say that, the God's speech it still exists, regardless of whether it's on paper or not, or in people's hearts or not. Still, it doesn't work. Because what you say about it, you say that the Qur'an itself you say that something which is a part of God's speech is eternal. It's a part of something. How can something which is a part of something else be eternal? Because there's this speech. If this was the Qur'an, this would be his speech. It would be limited to 114 chapters. And if you were to say that the Torah and the Gospel are also his speech, those are other parts. So there's something called the Qur'an and there's something called the Torah. So God's speech is divided. How can such a thing be eternal? All of them are eternal? Are all of them one in God? How does it work exactly? How do they exist in a timeless and without time and space? How? Without you saying that they're God. You cannot have two infinite beings. It doesn't work. One thing is infinite. It covers every single boundary. It's infinite. How can something else share in its infinity? Let's see. Okay. So it would be incorrect for one to say that God will protect his knowledge, his power, or his life. How is it possible to say how is it possible to say one thing regarding an eternal essential attribute, but not say the same thing about another? No consistency. And then the Ash'aris want to attack us, and the other people want to attack us. Now we say the Qur'an is created. Oh, wow, this is a big sin. How is it a big sin? Rather, what you're doing is kufr. I swear to God the Almighty that those who believe that the Qur'an is created, whether they know it or not, they're committing kufr that takes one out of Islam. I don't believe in this kufr ni'mah, the ungrateful kufr, and this kind of kufr and that kind of kufr, just to avoid, because people want to avoid and they want to evade and stay away from the kufr itself. Kufr is kufr. Because maybe they think that the person who's an apostate has to be killed. There is nothing in the Qur'an that's, how is it in the Qur'an that an apostate is to be killed? There's nothing in the Qur'an that says an apostate is to be killed. Man baddala dinahu faqatuluh, that's a hadith. Whoever changes his religion, kill him, that's a hadith. Why isn't there a verse that says that? There's a verse about what to do with the thief and what to do with the fornicator and adulterer, but there's no verse that talks about and what to do with someone who's a murderer. But there's no verse that talks about someone who leaves the religion of God. And the Qur'an is a detailed book. Come on. Yeah, so going back to the Qur'an, so that what is what is protected cannot be eternal. Because if something is dependent on something outside of it, outside of itself, it could not exist without that which it depends on. It can't exist without that other being, which would also have to be eternal. There is no co-eternal with God. That's shirk. It's polytheism. It is able to be replaced by that which is the like of it. That is, so that's those are Imam al-Hadi's words. It is able to be replaced by that which is the like of it. That is, the verses of the Qur'an can be abrogated. This means that the ruling of one verse could be rendered ineffective, omitted, and replaced by its like. This can only apply to something that is created. Can any kind of omission or change of any sort be applied to something which is uncreated, something which is absolute, something which is infinite, something which always was? How can it be applied to something which is created, which is uncreated? How can it be applied to something which is uncreated? How? Something which is uncreated but somehow was revealed in stages. How? How? Make it make sense. How? It is as the glorified, now Imam al-Hadi's words again. It is as the glorified says, we do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be oblivious, except that we bring forth better than it or similar to it. Qur'an 2:106. Imam al-Hadi, upon him be peace, cited this verse as a proof for his statement. The argument is, how can something eternal be repealed, made oblivious, or have an equal or superior? How? It is clear that it is possible for the verses of Qur'an to be replaced by something similar to or greater than itself. It is clear that it is possible for the verses of Qur'an to be replaced by something similar to or greater than itself. If one was to affirm that it is possible for an eternal to have a like, for something eternal to have a like, then one justifies the argument of the Christians and polytheists that the eternal God is comprised of likeness. The eternal God has likeness. There is that which shares in his likeness. I want to say something. When it comes to eternality, I don't equate eternality with infinity, because eternality I see as something, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I see as something which is without time. So, We as Muslims, we don't believe that anything is without time except God. But we say that God is infinite. He's not finite. He's infinite. And He is not limited. And He is not limited. He is infinite. He is absolute in every way. Not just in time, but also with space. But then again, you can one must remember that without space, time applies to space as well. So you cannot have space without time. Time exists in space. But eternality by itself is just without time. This thing has no time. I'm thinking out loud. If it exists in space, still, something without time cannot exist in space because space requires time. Thus, in the Islamic view, in the view of those who believe in God, the one true God, everything besides God is limited to space and time. Everything besides God is limited to space and time, including the heaven and the earth, because the heavens and the earth were created. There was a beginning point. There was a starting point. Thus, they began at a point. God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Fi sittati ayyam, 6 days. There was time. So God created time before He created the heavens and the earth. He said He created it within this amount of time. So you see, if one was to affirm that it is possible for an eternal to have a like, then one justifies the argument of the Christians and the polytheists that the eternal God is comprised of likeness. Furthermore, God says regarding the verses of Qur'an, and when we substitute a verse for another verse, God knows best what He revealed. They say, you are only an inventor of lies. 16:101. Again, and God says, and when we substitute a verse for another verse, God knows best what He revealed. They say, you are only an inventor of lies. Qur'an 16:101. This proves that the Qur'an is created, because how could something eternal replace something eternal and be replaced by something else that is eternal? How can something which has no beginning and no end, be replaced by something else which has no beginning and no end? How? That would mean that this has been ended by that, and that has been ended by that. How does that happen? We will end it there. Next, we're going to talk about an-nasakh wal-mansukh, the abrogation. How can something be this and not? How can something be that is eternal? It's timeless. That's it. It has no end. There will never be a before or after. Before this eternal thing existed, this eternal thing came to replace it. And then after that eternal thing came the other thing. How can it be? It's eternal. The Ash'aris, Maturidis, Salafis, Hanbalis, Atharis, those who are Athari but don't believe in Tajsim, they exist. They don't believe that God is a physical body. They all believe that the Qur'an is uncreated. All of them do. This is kufr. I'm sorry, but this is kufr. My dear brothers in humanity, my dear friends, my dear loved ones, this is kufr. This is kufr. What you're saying is kufr. What you're saying is taking you out of Islam. When you go and pray for someone who died, believing that the Qur'an is uncreated, this is kufr. You're praying over someone who died as a kafir, and you believed that he was a believer. This is not a joke. Wallahi, I swear to God, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. I don't care if Imam al-Shafi'i and Malik and Abi Hanifa and and Imam Ahmad all came together and said, Qur'an is uncreated. I will not believe it. I don't care. Who said that Imam Shafi'i is all-knowing? Who said that Imam Malik is all-knowing? I don't care. I don't care if Sufyan al-Thawri came and told me the Qur'an is uncreated. Who said that all of the tabi'een are on the right path? If they're all on the right path, why did they disagree when it comes to fiqh? Nothing wrong with disagreeing in fiqh, but why did they disagree in fiqh? Not only that, why did they disagree in aqeedah? Ikrimah was a khariji. Ikrimah was a khariji. Listen to this. I hope someday this reaches them, if they don't see it. Ikrimah was a khariji. He was a kharijite. The same Ikrimah that you see narrating from his teacher Ibn Abbas. He was a kharijite, in my understanding. Look him up. Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi was a Rafidi. Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi was a Rafidi. He's found in books of narrations that are Sunni. Amr ibn Ubaid, who is found in Sunni texts like Musannaf Abdul Razzaq and maybe Musannaf Ibn Abi Shaybah, some of the earliest books of narrations. Amr ibn Ubaid was a Mu'tazili. So far I named what? I named a Khariji. I named a Rafidi. I named a Mu'tazili. We said who? We said Ikrimah, Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, Amr ibn Ubaid. Jabir ibn Yazid was an Ibadi. So these people, not only did they differ on fiqh, they differed on aqeedah. So I don't care if Sufyan al-Thawri or someone else comes and says to me, if they were alive and they come to me and say the Quran is uncreated, I'm not going to listen to them. I don't care if they're from the tabi'een. Al-Hasan ibn Hayy, go to any fiqh book, many books of different books of tafsir, at least one book of tafsir, al-Qurtubi, more maybe, but different books of fiqh. كتاب المغني by Ibn Qudamah, كتاب اختلاف العلماء by Al-Jassas wrote the Mukhtasar, but the original version was written by Al-Tahawi, and other books of fiqh. Imam al-Hasan ibn Hayy, he was a Zaydi. Whether the modern Zaydis accept him fully as a Zaydi or not, doesn't matter. He was a Zaydi. He was a Shi'i. And fiqh, your fiqh that you have in your books is there. I rely on Sunni texts. But don't give me any kind of this view that, all the Salaf, my ummah will not, لا تجتمع أمتي على باطل, or my ummah will not unite upon that which is invalid. You believe that the Salaf, the early Muslims, they were all of them were good. But how is it that all of them were on the right path if they were all differing? What are you talking about? Which drug do you take? Who are you deceiving? Subhanallah, glory be to God. How many of those people, those imams and sheikhs, take money while telling people what we are refuting here? I disagree with who Ahlul Bayt are. I used to believe that they were limited to 5 people. Then I disagreed with it. I'm not going to tell you that tomorrow my opinion will not change, because maybe when I reach the section of that section, maybe my view will change. But in my view, it's different. The Shia might say no, it's not, because it's one of the tenets of faith to believe in imamah. Not necessarily the wilayah of Imam Ali, which I believe in, but in imamah. But still, this to me, this is different. When you say something like the Qur'an is uncreated and it's eternal, you walk into it through a door of kufr. You're not Muslim. I still love you. I still respect you. If whoever's watching knows me on a personal level, I love you, I respect you. But this is kufr. It's disbelief. It's not iman. Imagine praying while you're a kafir. The prayer will be invalid, except if you sincerely did not have any clue whatsoever. You never even thought about if the Qur'an is created or uncreated. Perhaps then that's another story. But for those who know, this is one of their biggest tests. Having the belief that Allah has a physical body, big test. Having the belief that the Qur'an is eternal, big test. Created or uncreated, big test. And that which we will approach is also a big test of predestination and abrogation. Perhaps I haven't read about abrogation. I've done small research, tiny research, almost just a few sentences worth. Maybe according to the Zaydiyya, maybe not. But I have done it according to abrogation, according to the Ibadiyya. I think I've made, but I think I've also done it of the Zaydiyya. I just want to be as honest as I can. I don't know. In any case, we're approaching abrogation. We're going to be approaching predestination, and we're going through beliefs. This is a book of beliefs, of creed. You think that sitting on a pulpit and just discussing about a story or two that happened, you think that's what suffices? That's it? Just tell the people stories? Don't teach them about the main principles of Islam? For years I have been emphasizing creed. You know, one could say that I did not become a Muslim, technically, figuratively speaking, symbolically speaking. Technically, I did not become a Muslim until the year late 2018. Why? Because I didn't know about creed. I didn't start learning about creed until late 2018. I was born into a Muslim family. I was raised a Muslim. I believed there's no God but God. I never revoked it. I always believed in God, but I never became an actual Muslim until I learned the creed. It's mentioned in this book. We're going to go over it at the end. What Imam al-Hadi said. If I'm not mistaken, Imam al-Hadi said it. If not, it's the commentators. That the first thing a child should learn in Islam is who is God. Who is God? They don't teach them this. They just say, oh, God created everything. You ask someone as a kid, who is God? Oh, he's light. Where is God or something? He's light. He's everywhere. They'll tell you these. In any case, I don't know, to be honest. This ummah is complaining of different things. It's complaining about what's happening in Palestine. It's complaining about what it deals with in other countries. It migrates to the West in search of refuge and care and sustenance. That's fine. Go anywhere in the world. Ardullahi wasi'ah. You can go anywhere. God's earth is vast. But in your case, in the Muslims' case, they run away from Muslim countries, take refuge in non-Muslim countries. Why is it that your countries are all messed up? Why? You know why? Because you're not following the way of God. You're making the Qur'an look like it's insufficient. You're making the Qur'an look like it cannot do anything for anyone, like it's worthless. Like the Qur'an is not worth anything. It's worth zero. Qur'an has no value. Allah has no value. God has no value. That's what you're making it look like in front of the world. Why? Because you're ignoring the Qur'an. You ignored the Qur'an. You dwell on the conquests of old. Oh, we conquered Spain, and we conquered the Andalus, and we conquered this, and we conquered that. You guys know that the ring, the iqal, they call it iqal, that they wear on their heads in the Arab countries. Do you know why it's black? It used to be white. Do you know what is one of the reasons why the color is black? They'll tell you that it used to be white, but it became black. Do you know why? Because when we lost Al-Andalus, we became sad, so we're mourning. It was a kind of mourning. That's one of the theories or reasons, possible reasons. It's not a fact, a known fact, but that's one of the reasons. Who gave us the right to conquer anyone anyway? Persia was a threat. The Byzantines were a threat, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Besides that, who gave us the right? There is no right in Islam. Did you ever see, subhanallah, I mean, this takes us to another subject, but that's what they'll do. The Muslims will just dwell on the past. They'll dwell on we conquered this, we conquered that. We are the ones who came up with this. We came up with algebra, al-Khawarizmi. We did this and we did that. You are not doing anything. And you did not do those things. Someone else did. But they were still Muslim. Well, it doesn't matter. Someone else still did them. God has the power to change the condition of a people if they change that which is in themselves. So don't ever say, oh, this is the will of God. Why did you get divorced? Qadr. Nasib, destiny. Maktub. Written. It's written. They blame God. They blame God. They don't realize it, but they're blaming God. Instead of saying, we disagreed and things happen, you know. They pray istikhara. They pray istikhara before they get married. The istikhara is seeking guidance from God. Then they go and get married. Then they go and they get divorced, and that somehow all of this was all written. Why did you even pray istikhara to begin with? Why did you seek guidance from God? So God made you get married to make you do something that he doesn't like? Divorce, which is a belief, and it's a belief that God, the most hated thing that God permitted is divorce. That's the belief, at least in the Sunni world. Which, I mean, even if it's not true, it doesn't, I mean, it is the worst thing, one of the worst things that it's the worst thing that exists. You know, I can accept that it's the worst thing that exists, that Allah made permissible because of his mercy, out of his mercy, of course. So someone does not have to stay with someone that they don't belong to. Next thing you know, in any case, how can it be? You people, whoever you are, specifically those of you who identify with Islam, whether you're Muslim or not, if you call yourselves Muslims, you need to revise your religion. You need to revise the Qur'an. You are behind, because God can give his power to anyone. God gave power to Pharaoh. God gave power to Nimrod. God gives power to anyone he wants in this world. And he can end this world. He can end it without giving power to the Muslims. He can end it that way. I know there's the belief in the Mahdi, but even if the Mahdi comes, what if all the Muslims are on the wrong path? Who is the Mahdi going to be with? Just a few people are going to be with the Mahdi. Because the majority is not on the right path. You think just because, we'll get to that. I haven't read it yet in the book of Imam Zayd ibn Ali, but we'll cover this. The book that contains the speeches and writings of Imam Zayd. The majority doesn't always have the truth. Allah says in the Qur'an, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And if you obey most of those on the earth, they take you away from the path of Allah. Chapter 6, verse 116. If I'm not mistaken, chapter 6, verse 116. Majority is what? Majority is more than 50%. If you obey most, majority. Most means majority. If you obey most of those in the earth, they will take you away from the way of God. That's just one verse. Every other place God says, and most of them don't believe. And وَأَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا, most of them don't know. Most of them, the most, are always bad, always wrong, and always bad. Subhanallah. Glory be to God. Belief that the Qur'an is uncreated is kufr. It's not Islam. Whoever wants to challenge me, challenge me. You think I care? Challenge me. Challenge. You worship the Qur'an. I worship God. That's the difference between me and you. But I wish for you that you worship God Almighty. One God, the true God. In any case, peace be with you all. I hope that people wake up, God willing, and if they don't, well, let them choose what they want to choose. If they want to choose to be astray, let them. Man sha'a falyu'min wa man sha'a falyakfur. Whoever wills, believes, and whoever wills, disbelieves. That's how it works. God says that in the Qur'an. So it's up to you. You're the one who's making a path for yourself. God is not making you move. You're making yourself move. He gave you a body. Your body does movement. He gave you a mind, your heart, all these things. And then if you make a mistake or something, you ask istighfar. And you ask God to increase your good deeds. You ask so that God can give you. Anyways. Thank you for watching, everyone. That's our topic. I wish you all the best. Keep safe always. I'll see you guys the day after tomorrow, God willing. And we will talk about abrogation according to the Zaydi school. And it may exist in other schools as well. But we'll talk about abrogation according to the Zaydi school of thought. And we'll see what we are looking at when it comes to abrogation. So, until then and always, keep safe, be well, peace be with you, and I'll see you next time, God willing.